Good evening. We call to order the meeting of the Edina City Planning Commission for September 12th, 2012. Jackie, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Scheer?
Here.
Commissioner Forrest?
Here.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Here.
Commissioner Kilberg?
Here.
Commissioner Potts?
Here.
Commissioner Platiker?
Here.
Commissioner Kowski?
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Here.
Commissioner Staunton?
Here.
Chair Grable?
Here. I'd like to welcome back to the commission Emily Turkowski from Edina High School and a new student member from Edina High School, Ben Kilberg. Welcome.
Thank you.
First item of business, approval of the meeting agenda. You have that before you. I would note that under public hearings, the variance for the side yard setback variance at 7312 Wooddale Avenue has been withdrawn, so we will not have that tonight. And with Mr. Fisher's arrival, we are fully staffed tonight. That's good. Any other additions or corrections, amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item, approval of the consent agenda. The first item there is the minutes of the meeting of August 22nd, 2012. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is community comment. This is an opportunity for residents of the city to comment on matters of importance to the city and to the commission, which are not scheduled for this evening's discussion. I would ask if there are any residents who wish to address the commission on any particular item to please come forward and let us hear your thoughts and your comments. Does anyone wish to speak in the public comment section? Community comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. The first item for public hearing is site plan and front yard setback review for Stewart Development Company, 10 Southdale Center, Edina, Minnesota. Carrie?
Okay, thank you, Chair Grable, members of the Commission. Before you is a development proposal for the southeast corner of the Southdale site. Specifically, the site is located at the intersection of 69th and York, this location here. It exists today as a kind of an overflow parking lot for the Southdale Center and the restaurants on the south end, and also a park and ride facility for Metro Transit. The Metro Transit facility is to be relocated up into this location here, close to the JCPenney parking ramp. Just quickly show you a couple of elevations of what that facility might look like. Still working on those plans, but that would be located up here. The proposed development would be located here. As you recall, when we talked about this in the sketch plan review, I believe members of the commission asked the applicant to provide an overall or a future development plan for what they envisioned Southdale in the future. And this was what was submitted. Really, the only additions would be they're seeing a potential for a restaurant site out on the corner here, and then the future water treatment site that would be located under the water tower. Moving on, this site is located in the Community Activity Center as defined in the comprehensive plan. It guides this site for building height up to 12 stories with a 3 to 5 story podium height suggested brought out to the street. This site is the most intense zoning district in terms of uses, height, and coverage that's allowed in the city. The floor area ratios allowed in this property are up to 1.0, and with the proposed development is just at 0.43. So the site is actually quite underutilized in terms of the floor area ratios that could be allowed at the Southdale site. The site is zoned PCD3, our commercial zoning district. Residential uses are a conditionally permitted use in that zoning district. The idea is to integrate residential within commercial property. So what the applicant is proposing is to construct 3 new buildings that would total 232 rental apartments and condominiums. There would be a 10-story building proposed along York, located here, a 6-story building along 69th, and behind it a 3 to 4-story rental townhome project that would face inward or face Southdale. For perspective here, this would be the Westin to the south. This is the 4-story apartments, kitty corner, and the CVS pharmacy. They're proposing a series of green roofs. This is the podium. We talked a little bit about that in the sketch plan review, and I believe it was all the way across in that review, so they've shortened that up somewhat, but so these 1-story bump outs are proposed. This is that main entry off of 69th and York, right at the intersection there. Another item that was requested of the Planning Commission was a perspective of how the heights would relate into the neighborhood. So this is the graphic that was submitted. You see the 10-story building here. This is the 6-story building. The Westin is behind it, 18 stories. The Southdale, it would be a little bit shorter than the 6-story building. Then you see over on the left-hand side the 4-story apartments with the CVS single-story. The construction materials would be a composite wood panel, varying colors with pre-finished metal panel, cast stone and cement. The applicant has a materials board for you to look at this evening, and they'll go into that in more detail. It's somewhat or generally similar to the project that Stewart is building in Bloomington on American Boulevard. The materials are brick in Bloomington, so there's a change there. They're proposing a series of pedestrian connections. What's highlighted in green here would be the new sidewalks that they're proposing. The orangish color, that would be existing. So they're proposing residents, in order to access the Southdale Mall, would come out to 69th Street and cut across this. It's basically a vast green space today. This is what it looks like today, where they would install that sidewalk, and then connect with an existing connection from the Galleria and up into the south side of the restaurants. So the request requires, that's before you tonight, is a site plan review, a conditional use permit to allow the residential uses, front yard setback variance for 115 feet, what's the required setback based on the height of the building, to 63 feet. A parking stall variance for Southdale from 6,747 stalls to just over 6,400 spaces. They're also requesting a replat of the entire Southdale site. The access into the site is similar to the sketch plan that we took a look at. It would be a right-in, right-out on 69th, and an additional access off of the frontage road for Southdale. This would be turned into a 2-way for better access for residents in and out. So they would utilize the existing entrances into Southdale along York and 69th, located here. There would primarily, the parking for the project would be underneath the building. There's 287 stalls underneath the building. They would be accessed from the north and from the west side, located here. There would be a couple of surface lots located on the south side and a smaller one on the north side, 55 stalls in all. They're proposing some extensive landscaping. Primarily, it's all paved out there. Based on the perimeter of the site, they need 54 overstory trees. They're proposing over 130, with a full complement of understory trees. So there would be quite an increase in landscaping and green space with the project. In terms of the comprehensive plan, as I touched on, the comprehensive plan encourages mixed use. This would be the first residential element introduced onto the Southdale site. And again, the site really is underutilized when you take a look at the floor area ratio for what could be allowed on this site. Some of the the policies and goals in the comprehensive plan that this project would meet: locating prominent buildings to visually define corners and screen parking lots. We saw the the elevations from 69th and York. Provide sidewalks along primary streets and connections to adjacent neighborhoods along secondary streets and sidewalks. Increase the mixed-use development that's supported by adequate infrastructure and can be supported by the roadways. The one item, and I think this was emphasized during the sketch plan review by the Planning Commission, was making connections to Southdale. So what we're suggesting in the staff report, again, this is the green, the proposed walkways. So a resident that would reside here, in order to access Southdale Mall, again, would have to come to 69th Street and then tie into this existing connection, which actually leads to the Cheesecake Factory, one of the southerly restaurants. In order to access the mall, the closest entrance is located over here. So you would need to walk in front of those restaurants that way. So staff is suggesting a more direct connection to be made from the residential development into Southdale. And we're just providing this as an example. It wouldn't necessarily have to be this way. But there is an opportunity. There's an existing green space located right here that could lead right to that mall entrance. This is a look at that green space today. Potentially it could be widened out, maybe lose a couple of parking spaces here and shifting the roadway over. But it does provide that connection to the mall. So we're suggesting that a condition of any approvals would be to add that additional connection. A traffic study was done by WSB. Chuck Rickard is again with us here this evening. And the study concludes that the proposed use wouldn't change the level of service on adjacent roadways. There is a recommendation in that study for additional queuing space along 69th in order to make left-hand turns into that center. That's suggested as a condition of approval. Parking study was also done based on that parking variance that's requested. And based on all the uses at Southdale, the restaurants, the theater, the square footage of the retail space, again, over 6,700 spaces are required. Overall, the Southdale site would provide just over 6,400 spaces. So there are 305 stalls short. That variance is requested. The study concludes that 5,952 stalls are necessary to support this project. Also want to remind the Commission that back in 2001, a 759 stall parking variance was granted for Southdale when the restaurants and the theater were added to the center. So there is an existing variance, and actually the number of stalls is reduced, and that's based on the square footage of the center changing and the number of restaurant seats within the center also being reduced. In looking at the conditional use permit criteria, staff believes, as outlined in the memo, that all the conditions there are met as long as that additional pedestrian connection is made with Southdale. In looking at the variance standards for the two variances, staff believes that the request is reasonable. The variances can be supported. The city code, as we've talked about in the past, suggests that buildings be pulled up to the street to create that active pedestrian environment between buildings and the street. The requirement for the large setback runs contradictory to that policy and goal of the comprehensive plan. The Southdale site is unique in itself, given it's an 80-acre parcel, a little bit underutilized, again, when looking at the floor area ratios. And we feel that the building is in character with the area and would fit in given the varying heights that are located out there, with the west end at 18 stories. Southdale roughly equal to the 6-story project. And the parking stall variance, based again on that study, is reasonable. If parking were ever to really become a problem out there where there was a shortage, there's plenty of room on the site to build a structured parking if needed. And as I mentioned before, there is a subdivision request as part of this application. Currently, there are 9 lots that make up the entire Southdale parcel. As a result of the replat, there still would be 9 parcels. What they're proposing to do is this area that you see in purple would be combined with the larger Southdale site here, and then they would create the new lot down here for the development. So it's just a shifting, essentially, of that lot down to the south. So because there's no additional lot being created, park dedication fees can't be collected from the city. There's no new lot being created. Primary issue and conclusion for the Planning Commission to consider is the proposed development reasonable for the site, including the conditional use permit, and are the variances justified? And so, as staff has indicated, we believe that the proposal is reasonable, that the conditional use permit criteria is satisfied as long as those pedestrian connections are made, and that the variances are justified. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the site plan with the variances subject to the findings and conditions in their staff report, and the conditional use permit, again, subject to the findings and conditions, and the preliminary plat approval. So with that, I can turn it over to the Planning Commission for any questions.
Carrie, a couple of questions just to get started. Are there any issues with the replat? Is that just sort of a pro forma thing?
It is, yeah.
Okay. And so there's a conditional use permit, a couple of variances. Just to guide our thinking here on the commission, is this something that when we come to the time to act on this, can these be acted on all at once or serially, or what would you recommend as far as that goes?
The way I've separated into it's 3 separate actions. It's the conditional use, it's the site plan with the variances, the conditional use permit, and the plat. So it could be done in 3 separate motions. Okay. You could add conditions for each one or separate ones, however you'd like.
Right. Questions of staff? Commissioner Fisher.
Carrie, can you go back just right towards the end of your presentation? You talked about the parcel redistribution and the park dedication fees, and that one went right past me. So why would park dedication fees not be part of this? Because it's if they were creating a new lot out on the site, then the city can collect park dedication fees. But because it's just a reconfiguring of the existing lots, our city attorney has advised us that we cannot. I thought park dedication fees went with the fact that you're building more housing. It runs with, if you're creating a new lot, it runs with the plat, the subdivision. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Mr. Chair, Carrie, can you go back to the city ordinance that allows relief for setback for creating active streetscapes, active pedestrian environments along streets? And I know what it is. I'm looking at this and I want to see how the staff is creating the idea that this is an active frontage.
Yeah, it just suggests that, or the code suggests that the city can consider variances for buildings being brought up to the street if there's a creation of an active pedestrian street frontage. And so with what the applicant is proposing here with the sidewalk and the landscaping, we felt that would be justified. They're creating that active environment rather than having a parking lot in front of the building.
Other questions of staff? Very good. Would it be appropriate to hear from our traffic expert at this point?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I guess I hadn't planned on any type of presentation, more to answer questions if you had any, but just in summary, what I looked at was the entire Southdale development, including the existing conditions. We had them give us what was vacant on the site today. We included that in our background traffic generation, so we made sure that once the mall is fully developed, that all that traffic was considered as part of our analysis. We added in the proposed future restaurant on the corner. We added in the apartment development and distributed traffic accordingly with the new roadway configuration on site that they have with the two-way traffic in front of the apartment complex there instead of the one-way as it is today. It is now a two-way. The access off of York is now going to be reconfigured slightly to allow full movements out of that, in and out of that intersection, that signalized intersection there. So all that was considered in our analysis. The only issue that we really saw, and it wasn't a capacity issue, it was just purely a volume issue, how much traffic is in that left turn lane in the future coming on 69, turning into the site at the furthest to the east driveway there, okay, right next to the apartment complex. In the future, with all the development, with all the traffic, we projected 330 trips in there. Typically, when you get up to around 300 cars, you start looking at two left turn lanes or dual left turn lanes. To mitigate that, we're proposing that at the driveway to the west, the first driveway into Southdale, where there is no left turn movement provided today, right by the theater, that we would provide a left turn lane in at that location. So there would be an opportunity for people going to the theater or to that end of the mall could turn in that first driveway rather than going to that second driveway. So we're proposing to split those movements out slightly by creating that left turn lane at the other driveway.
Point these out on the map as you go through these. I'm kind of lost track of where you're going. Oh, sorry.
What we found, again, was in the future with the full development of the site, that this left turn in at this location was about 330 trips, with the whole mall. So what we're proposing is down at this location, adding a left turn lane. Today, this left turn movement is not allowed into the mall. So we are proposing that a left turn lane be added here, which would pull some of this left turn traffic, almost half of it, away from this intersection, split it between the two intersections, which provides a better operation between both intersections, actually.
How does that happen? Is that just something that the city engineer decides we need to do and then it gets done, or
Well,
is that is this part of this proposal?
Well, it's one of our recommendations for the ultimate development of the mall, including its full development, this and the restaurant. So it's included as part of all that. How it gets included in this development, I guess, is a decision that yourselves and the city council will have to make, how it actually is included.
Okay. Commissioner Potts.
Any consideration for adding signals at either of these turns, or how close are you getting to that?
There's not enough traffic at either of those locations for signals, and the operations were fine without them, so there really wasn't a need. The traffic on 69th isn't, York has a lot more traffic on it. 69th didn't have quite as much traffic on it, so it wasn't, in fact, it was borderline if there even really needs to be two lanes in both directions in the future. So we're maintaining the two lanes, but it's borderline that it even needs two lanes.
Commissioner Forrest.
Could you comment on your roundabout build alternative?
Well, that was a consideration that was brought up, early on to look at, similar to what was done over on 70th Street, with the Galleria, the entrances to the Galleria, to look at what roundabouts how they would operate. We found that they would operate fine, that they would operate just as well, but we also found that the existing configuration operates fine also. So there wasn't really a need to go to the roundabout alternative. It would clean things up a little bit, but it's a pretty costly cleanup, you would say.
Other questions of Mr. Rickert?
Mr. Rickert, I have
Commissioner Schroeder.
thank you. Two questions. In the traffic and parking study, was there any kind of analysis of the occupancy of this parking lot? How busy is this parking lot?
We did not do a occupancy
Okay.
of the parking lot. No.
And then when we talk about how many parking spaces there would still be at Southdale, did the parking study look at the distribution of those spaces around the center relative to kind of the primary uses, the things that would actually be driving the need for lots of parking?
We did look at how they were distributed around the center and felt that, it's fairly well distributed around the area. We looked at the uses. The biggest concern, I guess, that we had was around the theater and how traffic actually accessed around the theater, and this left turn lane would actually help that, bringing more people to the theater that would park over, instead of up on top, they would park over in the ramp or over in that area. So it actually helps distribute that traffic. So making those additional, providing that additional movement provides a little better distribution of the traffic around the mall. But other than that, it was fairly well distributed around the mall.
I just want to make sure, that was, you mentioned kind of distribution of traffic. I was wondering about distribution of parking spaces. Are they connected?
They were in this case where, with the one access with no left turn in here, people would tend to go in here and park in this parking field, more, and by providing a left turn lane in here, it provides more opportunity for people to spread that out. So what we found a little bit was and you can kind of see it on this aerial, there's a lot of cars parked here. It never was full, from our observations, but it was, there's a few more cars in that end than the other end.
Commissioner Fisher.
Mr. Rickert, when you were doing the traffic review, I find it interesting, the recommendation to put the left turn lane on the westerly drive in. Coming that way to the mall today, every time I drive by there, I'm like, why can't I turn left here? So I'm always doing that move back around. Do you know why historically that wouldn't have had a left turn lane there? It seems logical that there would be, but I just didn't know if there was, from a traffic perspective, why you might not want it there.
Obviously I wasn't involved in the original studies when they switched the circulation internally on the mall. I can't tell you why. I mean, it just, unless there was a concern back then that traffic would back up to France Avenue for some reason, that's the only thing I could think of. But, there's really no need not to have it.
I didn't know if, as traffic guy, you probably sit there and go, oh, it's the old XYZ shuffle move they did. And nothing scientific about it. It's just,
No, not
Okay.
that I can see.
all right.
Maybe sometime you can come talk to us about the XYZ shuffle move.
You'll need a long meeting for that.
Other questions of Mr. Rickert? Thank you, sir. Would the applicant care to make a presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commission members. I'm Stuart Nolan. I'm here representing the development partnership of Simon Properties and Stewart Companies. You're well familiar with Simon Properties already. Excuse me. And we came before you several months ago where we told you a little bit about our company. So I won't bore you again with all that history. If you have questions, of course, we'll welcome them and answer them. Since that meeting, we've been working with BKV Architects, well, now for several months. Besides the studies that you've just heard about, we have spent many meetings and many drawings and redrawings and the site plan. And I'll tell you, I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I've never been as excited about a new proposed development as I am this one. We just think the location is AAA. Of course, we think the city of Edina is AAA, and we think from our market research, we've been doing a lot of market research concurrently with working with the architects. And our market research shows that there is a large need for very high quality rental housing in the city. And I can't think of a better place to put it than this site, given all the amenities to the site that we all know about. So we're here respectfully asking for your approval. I can just say that I don't think if we're allowed to build this development, I don't think there is a higher quality rental development. I'm sure there isn't in the Twin Cities today. And I'll set forth that our plans are that this building, this development, will be of high condominium quality. I'm just putting it in those adjectives so you have an idea of what we have in mind. I think the purpose of the rest of the meeting is to talk about the architecture of the site, and we're not getting into the interiors of the building, but I thought it was important that you know where we're coming from. Next, I'll introduce the architects, but I'll be available later, but if there's any questions of me right now, I'll certainly answer them.
Questions of Mr. Stewart at this point, or shall we wait till the applicants finish their presentation? Shall we wait? And why don't you proceed with the...
Okay, with that, we have really enjoyed working. We've worked with BKB Architects before, and working with them again on this project has been terrific. And so I'll introduce, we'll start with Dave Metzenberger from BKB.
Chair Grable, Commissioners, thank you for having us back. We will walk through our presentation. I have some of my previous notes from our sketch plan review, and I wanted to go through some of those points that you had requested and show you how we've addressed them, and then answer any other questions you might have about the previous proposal. So moving forward, as you can see, actually with this right here, I wanted to address part of the entry question to the mall that was raised earlier with the connection, and I'll come back to this later, but there are two entries to Southdale, right, one here and one a little bit closer here right behind the Cheesecake Factory. So just while that image is up, I wanted to point that out. So looking at the new site plan as it has advanced from the previous scheme, wanted to point out how we have incorporated a lot of sustainable features and have enhanced the streetscape from what is presently there, the pervious surface or the impervious surface of the parking lot. And we've replaced that with extensive impervious surface. Right now, with this site plan, there's 42% pervious surface on that site. So taking it down from 100% impervious to 60%, and we feel that's quite well achieved. We've done that with a lot of these berming instances. There's one here to the north. You can see another here, and then as you come around the corner in some of the images you've seen, there's one wrapping the entry here at the corner of 69th and York, as well as some more along the back and the southwest corner. Alternately, with those berms, we're using them to almost do a reverse and capture a lot of our stormwater with some stormwater gardens. So taking a berm that goes up and kind of inverting it and making it go down right next to that, planting that with a lot of flowers, plants, rain garden types of things, and having some of the stormwater be able to filter down through that, helping the site very much. We're adding a new intersection, clarifying, you've probably seen in the traffic report, straightening out this intersection so that anybody that residents here, residents in the West End, can cross the street, walk up here and walk directly in, go to Cub Foods, go to any of the other amenities over here. Also allowing for a turn into this space, both from the south and from the north, which now it's all exit only. So we are reconfiguring this intersection with the help of Hennepin County and the city. So that is something that we're proposing. From this corner, we're adding an extensive walkway space that traverses the entire eastern side of the building. This walkway doesn't exist presently. Right now there's a little stop here that gets you across the street, but we're adding that. We're also adding a lot of, and Mike Krish from our office will discuss this a little later, some active space here with a fitness center and a lot of units and outdoor patios that people will be up against that street, but with a decent enough buffer. We have about 65 feet back from the back of curbs, so there's going to be a lot of nice green space here. The traffic is buffered from the York Avenue by a lot of green space, and so these folks will have a nice kind of front yard green space and bringing some activity out into that space. Moving around to the front entry court, coming in off of 69th Street and moving through this entry court, it's a circular space, so you come in, you can turn around, you can drop off your friends, you can continue onward. There is a cut through the berm here, which is acting as well to screen the surface parking on this corner and make it a focal point. There's a slice through that berm, which will bring pedestrian traffic, connects to both these sidewalks into the front door of the space. That sidewalk then continues along, again buffered from 69th with some green and plantings, and then continues on and around here. You can exit the facility from this back location and come down and around. The proposed connection to Southdale is right here, and I'll move on to that. I think I have a separate sheet here that I'll pull up. Or perhaps not. But we had one previously in Carrie's image that pulls you down here and connects you up. I'll see if we have one. If not, I may have to flip back to his presentation. Yes, my apologies about that. So moving across here, we have extensively added plantings to this green boulevard. Right now it's just grass and trees as was shown, and we've created with shrubs and grasses and flowers some really interesting visual cues that point the eye back towards the mall and south across the street as you're traversing through that, creating a beautiful sensation to walk through as well as to buffer, again, the pedestrian from traffic. We felt that the connection to the mall, and this was one of the key pieces that you had outlined before, pedestrian connections were essential. We heard that from numerous commissioners, and we took that to heart. There was questions not only to the mall, but a lot of commissioners brought up access to Centennial Lakes, Transit Center, the Galleria, the promenade space, and how we go both north and south, and how we make these connections safe and inviting. And so we wanted to take advantage of the existing connection that already exists here that ties into the promenade. By pulling you all the way down to this point, a guest can either go south into the Galleria and into that promenade space, continuing on to Centennial Lakes, or they can go north into the mall. And we wanted to enhance, again, that mall entrance that I was speaking about is right here. So this is a fairly direct connection right into that mall. And we wanted to enhance this space with some green screens, trellises, and some pergola structures that would help keep people out of the rain as they're moving up to that mall entrance. So enhancing that existing connection with some extra amenities as well. And then I think one of the other questions you were asking about was some bike parking. We have added some bike parking right here at the front entry, some more bike parking back by this back connection. So as you move through the site here and come to the back entry, there's some bike parking there, as well as bike parking inside the parking garage. In amenity spaces, we have a pool in the center, and this one I do have a close-up of, if I can get this zoomed in, please. So this is the enhanced central courtyard. I know there was a lot of discussion about this and making it an amenity space. This is the club room with the green roof you can see here as you move from the front entry through this space and exit out into the courtyard. What we're creating here is some unique little pergola spaces. This space has a grill section and some tables and chairs, some steps down and a ramp down into this lower section with another pergola and seating here. We have a focal point of an art or a fountain located at this point. We have an access from the north coming down this walkway with some beautiful trees and planters to create a great LA. Again, a focal point here of art. As you move to the central courtyard, we have a pool that's enclosed by a wall and enclosed by another one of those berms that I've been talking about. So some earth wraps around this, and so this is cut out within that space with a little decking and the pool space here. Wanted to do some contrast between active and passive spaces and create some spaces for exploration or meditation or kind of loud and soft, if you will. So within this space is a little bit more wooded. Because we are not over the parking garage here, we can plant big trees and they can grow to quite large sizes. So we're planting a lot of larger canopy trees here with a couple little kind of nooks out in the forest for people to go and sit. We have a bocce court along the south edge for some active play space, and then a walkway all along the back for residents to go to their individual patios and entrances to the flats. Those are also along this edge. And you can see here the green roofs on top of the condominiums, which will give a great amenity to those spaces. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mike Krish, to talk a little bit about the architecture, and then we'll both stand for questions.
Thank you, David. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Mike Krish with BKV Group, and I wanted to speak a bit about the architecture. I'll try not to take too much time here, but I wanted to speak about a few things that create the character for the project. But first, stepping back regarding the process for the project, I'm going to go back here one. Oops, I will leave it. The process, as we looked at the site. Part of what we thought was very exciting about this, the West End had established a level of quality in the area that was new and fresh, that began to start invigorating Southdale as a prime center for the city of Edina. And we wanted to be able to capture that energy that was established and add on to that and weave that kind of energy into our project that would begin to knit not only that project with ours, but create a continuum for the area around Southdale. And so that was part of our goal. And so being able to continue and establish this new identity for Southdale through the surrounding buildings, we thought was very important. Another component of the quality of this development that we wanted to capture was to create something that we thought was very sophisticated, elegant, fresh, something that could brand itself well as again linked to the quality development around that's immediately surrounding our site as well, so that it captured that. So then, as we developed the concept, another component of how we derived the architecture of this was the idea that being at the center at Southdale, where retail happens, where you have fashion, creating that idea of something that's, again, sophisticated, that's fashionable, yet timeless as well, were important concepts that we wanted to create in the architecture. And as you have seen in the images, the idea of the materials that we used and how we use them creates this kind of layering of materials, and the idea of kind of a woven coat through the use of wood and different types of wood that are found on the project, but also blending that with the different materials of metal and stone and so forth. So maybe we can pass this around if you'd like, just so you can see the level of quality. But they're fresh, contemporary materials, and yet they're timeless materials. So stone, wood, and these rich metals of silver, champagne, black, became the palette that we used to stitch and weave the exterior components of the building to create the architecture. And we felt as well, if you look at the Westin, which we think ours is very much differentiated from that, but some of the unique components of that, very contemporary, and yet it has these classic colors and materials with the black and the large amounts of glass and a sophisticated way to use the materials. Part of the project as well in picking these materials was also being able to take the project and anchor it to the image and identity of the city of Edina. So this isn't just about the immediate location of where we're at, but we felt like we needed to stretch beyond this immediate location and reach out to what are some of the defining characters of the city itself, the physical attributes of the city. Some of those components are the land and stone retaining walls. A lot of the landscaping that David talked about are anchored with retaining walls of the land and stone. We felt we wanted to bring that component into the building materials as well. So we use that to anchor the base of the building in the in the base of the building as you go around. So in the 6th story, it wraps up to create the base of the building there. You find it in the individual townhomes along the curved arc of it. And so we wanted to make sure that we integrated that. Again, the use of the rich colored woods and metals, again, classic timeless materials that we wanted to, again, bring into the architecture. Actually, there's similarities to this building here in how we looked at the neighborhoods to bring in those rich materials and integrate that as a part of the architecture. The organization of the building. Let's see. Well, here's an image of you've seen these. So again, the idea of the use of wood as this outside layer, as kind of a coat or skirt that wraps the exterior, and yet it reveals elements behind it and allows balconies to bridge through it and create a rich dynamic of materials. As they wrap the corner, there's no two sides that are exactly alike. Which we think is part of the elegance of this. And also as you walk as a pedestrian, walking the site and walking around the area, every view you encounter, the building itself changes and moves and becomes very dynamic. This is a view on the north side looking back into the courtyard, and again revealing through different layers of materials, bringing a high level of energy in the project. The use of green roofs is a part of what we're trying to incorporate, so that even those roof surfaces become interesting elements and are a pleasing element to look at from above even. Again, as you go around the building, it's constantly changing. Going back to the organization, we looked at what the city plans were for this, where it talked about reinforcing the grid and the street edges, and so we positioned this collection of buildings really rather than one big monolithic structure. We broke it down into 3 separate buildings with the 6th story along 69th that paralleled that street, and then we broke it where the main entrance is, and it's reinforced by the landscaping and the plaza there. But we end up with, our main entry piece that's of a smaller scale that brings it down to pedestrian level, and then it allows you to see through the development to the courtyard and past that. And then we have the 10-story building paralleling York. Again, that creates a dynamic between the 6-story building. And along York at the base, we ended up bumping out the first level where we had, again, different functions. The main entry is its own kind of form and element. The fitness area, as it starts marching along York, bumps out to create its own element and podium component. That the whole first floor, again, we've kind of hiked up the materials to reveal the base and the legs of the project, and to create a pedestrian realm that's unique and different and differentiated from the building above. And then as you go further to the north again, the building bumps out. So again, it's this dynamic of creating this podium in a little different way that becomes energetic and fun to view, and it allows some privacy for the residents on that level, and yet it opens up these elements to create a very energetic and activated space along York. Again, the idea of a coat, in a sense, using that analogy, it goes up to not all the way up the building. It stops at the 8th floor here, and on the 5th floor at the 6-story building. Again, then revealing the building behind it, and at that point as well, the building steps back and breaks. And so again, it's quite animated as we move around the building. And I guess, not to get into any particular details, it's also animated with a residential scale and character through the use of projecting balconies with the accented black colors that, again, add another level of detail to the project. And I guess I will just leave it with, here's some images that show the integration of the landscaping, which is very important, and the berms and the trees. This is not an isolated object in a sense. We're creating an environment that, again, it becomes very pedestrian friendly, that changes and moves throughout the site. If you have questions regarding any specific details of the architecture, I'd be happy to answer those questions for you, but that just kind of gives an overall character for it.
And just to finalize, we thank the staff for all their hard work. It's been great to work with them. We have just, as I pointed out earlier, the one question about adding the pedestrian pathway in the location that staff is pointing out. We think that we are making those intentions and meeting those intentions that the commission asked for with the pedestrian pathway that I've outlined for you. So I just ask your consideration for that. And I didn't want to check into, I think we're okay with all the other conditions. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Motzenberger. I got a couple questions, and we'll see if other commissioners have some questions. You mentioned water. I assume that since you are taking a what's now a parking lot and you're building on it and adding more landscaping, that the water runoff will be less than what it is potentially now.
That is correct.
Okay. I like, excuse me. I like the configuration of your sidewalk. It does go over, and you can access the theater as well as the upper mall and the promenade through the Galleria. But when I was in high school, geometry was the one math course that I was good at, and the shortest point between two, or the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Would you do you have any objections to adding or what are your objections to adding the additional suggested pedestrian access, which goes more directly to the mall entrance up by, was that Herberger's now?
I think the only objection, it would bear just some exploration with Simon and the mall. We didn't want to lose there's 50 parking spaces along that route, and it seemed from Simon's input that they didn't want to lose those 50 spaces. Currently, there's about 10 mature trees on that island, and putting a walkway up the middle of that would require them to be removed and green space to be removed. So we didn't want to do that. If there is opportunity to go on the other side of the island, I don't know what the width of the drive aisle is there, and if you could go the other direction instead of the parking lot and add a walkway there. But our objection there was that you're then an exposed pedestrian on the walk and you're not buffered. So our intention was to have a buffered walk. You'd go down the middle, which would require the loss of all the trees. And we felt that with all that impervious surface there already, adding more would not be positive. And we thought with adding the extensive amount of landscaping we were doing on the south end, that would offset that.
If I were a betting man, I would put a lot of money on a bet that people are going to walk straight up that parking lot somehow. So I think that bears it bears some consideration. A couple of issues that came up. We received some emails about this proposal. One mentioned increased traffic. I think Mr. Rickert has addressed that issue. The other question that seemed to come out was whether or not luxury apartments are supportable in today's economy, and maybe you or Mr. Stewart might want to respond to that question.
I think I will let the expert respond.
All right.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We think there is a big demand. We wouldn't be doing this. We operate several thousand apartments around the Twin City area. We've got rents that go up downtown to $5,000 a month. Granted, there's a limited a number of people that will pay $5,000 a month, and we're not projecting those rents for the entire building. But there hasn't been the greater Southdale area. I've been around here since it opened. The greater Southdale area had a lot of rental housing built in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and much less in later years. And not everybody wants to live in a condominium. Not everybody wants to live in an apartment. Not everybody wants to live in a house. We think it's important that the community have a variety of housing choices, and we don't see any real high-end, very high-end rental choices in this area. Quite frankly, there are some very nice apartments, but we're looking at bringing it to another level. There are a number of people that that we've talked to that want to remain in Edina, want to sell their home in Edina, but they don't want to make the commitment to buy. And renting seems to be the answer for them. In fact, it seems to be the answer for my wife, possibly too, which is certainly surprising to me. We're projecting rents that currently exist in today's market as far as rents per square foot in other places around the Twin Cities in newer luxury apartments. And we are very confident, as in Simon, that this location can accommodate it. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Carpenter?
I do have a question with respect to the demand for these units. It sounded like you were explaining it as largely being anecdotal. I mean, was there an actual study that was performed?
No, we did it. No, not an outside study. We did it with our own people. We have our own marketing department. Probably the best marketing is we bought York Plaza Apartments from Prudential in 1997. It was repossessed by Prudential, and they owned it for several years. We bought it. York Plaza was built in the mid-70s. We have 260 apartments and adjacent 260 condominiums. Condominiums run them, they have their own management, we have our management, we share a common community building. We have upgraded York Plaza Apartments a great deal, without going into detail, a great deal over the 15 or so years that we've owned it. And the best market research you can do is our leasing people are greeting potential customers 7 days a week, and there is a demand that we've been told over and over for facilities, sizes, amenities, newer look that isn't being met, and in addition, we've had some focus groups, but it's been informal. We don't have any written outside study. I, frankly, put much more credibility in what our own staff has been able to discover than I do in some of these formal market studies. And
so in terms of what your staff recommends or what they've concluded, I mean, do they come up with a numerical calculation? Or I'm just trying to understand the discussion between there being a demand and then understanding what that actually means.
We're looking at, to describe it a little bit, maybe this will help. We have 232 apartment townhome units. There are 10, we didn't dwell on it much, but we have 10 townhomes that are on the outside of the circular part of the site facing the Southdale Mall. And then there are apartments on the other side of that facing a courtyard, and then we've got the 6-story and the 10-story. Large windows capturing the views, and our apartments generally rent on the average of about $2 a square foot a month. So if we've got 1,000-foot one bedroom, it would rent for $2,000 a month. I'm not sure we have many one bedrooms that large. Right. Now, we go up to some penthouse units that are 2,600 square feet. I dare say they would probably rent for higher than $2 a square foot. So there we're getting over $5,000 a month. They're unique units. They're on the upper 2 floors. There aren't many of them. Typically, 2-bedroom, and the rents that I'm giving you include underground parking. And so the typical the 2-bedroom apartment in the range of 1,300 square feet times $2, so we're in $2,400, $2,500 for a nice sized, well-appointed 2-bedroom apartment with a garage and all the amenities that come with it. Like I say, we are managing, owning several thousand units in the Twin Cities. We are confident in the market. I wouldn't do this building in many locations in the Twin Cities. I'm not sure I would do it like this in any, but this location we feel demands it. We think it's badly needed.
For the units that you do you have an estimate or a calculation as what your current vacancy rate is?
I'm sorry.
The current vacancy rate for the units that you do currently manage?
Currently, I'm glad to say we're, about 2.6%? We're about 2.6% vacant right now in the Twin Cities. It's a strong rental market.
Okay.
It's not going to stay that way. I mean, our business has its ups and downs like any business. And there's a fair amount of rental housing going up around the Twin Cities right now, as we all know. However, most of it is being focused in 3 submarkets: downtown, the uptown area, and student housing around the university. And there is so much housing being developed in those 3 areas that it seems to make the total being built so much larger than it really is, because there's a lot of other needed places for rental housing in the Twin Cities that aren't given the attention. Point being, we just opened 124 units in luxury Class A units in New Brighton in June, and we're already more than half rented. We've got Genesee Apartments in Bloomington, which is we've been partially open since midsummer. We expect to get our final CO Friday, and that's 36% rented. We're ahead of projections. The market's strong. We're renting buildings that aren't even completed yet. So there is a demand in other places. Everybody doesn't want to live by the university or in the uptown area or downtown. There's amenities to Edina and much employment all around the Twin Cities that a lot of people want to live in relative proximity to their employment and in a good community.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Staunton.
So maybe if we could pull up the, actually if you could, I think the top drawing on that you have in front of you, if we could look at that. Oh, Jordan, if you can get, okay. So, so I'm sitting here thinking about the whole yellow, green, red block and how this fits into it. And I realized that you're focused on the corner, but I'm less focused on whether we have a pedestrian path to the front door of the mall than I am thinking about this being the first step in a redevelopment of this whole block. And our comprehensive plan talks about super blocks and the consequences of super blocks and how we kind of manage that to create a more pedestrian-friendly, multimodal kind of environment. So one of the things I'd like you to and it may not be on this drawing, but I wanted to use this drawing to highlight the big picture. But what I'd like to get a feel from you about is how do you see the backside interacting if you can envision for a moment something developed right across, right next to, outside those townhouse doors? What have you done in terms of the site plan to make it? What I don't want to do is back us into a corner that prevents the next thing from developing. And I wonder if you have some thoughts on that and how you might share where on the kind of upper left hand of this drawing, suppose something developed across there other than a parking lot. I don't know what it is, but something. How would your development interact with that?
Chair Grable, Commissioner Staunton, thank you. That's a good question. And it is something that we've thought about, and understanding that and thinking about it in the present tense and the future tense, and how we want to work with the views at present and how that can be adapted. And so one of the key pieces that we looked at here, this is an easy one because it's a little simpler drawing to see just where the landforms are that we're proposing along there to help screen some of that parking at present from the townhouses. However, this also, again, because of the landforms and because this is planted in this location, it offers the opportunity, should there be something built across this, to reconfigure this. And even the plantings that are in here now are configured in such a way that they start to create a corridor. And so you almost start to have a street. There's an opportunity to almost mirror this on the other side as a front door to something that might exist on this side. So you start to kind of create a street. Some of these evergreens that are now screening views might be switched out for some canopy trees that could begin to create like an alley that is along most residential streets. And you can still have some of the interest of the berms in there, but you begin creating a street envelope, and that setback, the building setback here could equal the building setback on the other side, and you create some nice space there. So I think it is set up for that opportunity.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Well, I've actually got a lot of questions, but I'm just going to focus on one for now. I want to go to the issue of the setback relief that you're looking for based on our staff's comment about creating an active pedestrian environment at the street. You said that you think you have a decent enough buffer, and I'm curious what that really means, because if we're trying to create an active pedestrian street, we don't actually want a buffer. We want the development to interact with the street, not separated by a decent enough buffer. I think you're going to come back and say the traffic will be buffered, but I want to know how the two interact. We're granting a significant relief, and where we've looked at this before, it's been to create active storefronts. In fact, when we had a proposal, which is now CVS, but the former proposal, we were actually talking about an active pedestrian street front being created by having active operable doors on the sidewalk that's in the public realm. And we don't have that. And I want to expand upon that. And just one other kind of connected comment. You said that residents would be able to take advantage of connections to the transit center, but in the diagram that's been prepared, we don't actually see connections going to the transit center. But my largest concern is, how do we reconcile the setback variance that you're looking for, given that I don't actually see an active frontage here?
Chair Grable, Commissioner Schroeder, I think one of the key things to look at is, if you vote in our favor tonight with some of the variances that we have, we are actually going to be closer to the street than code would require us. Code would make us go back 115 feet from this location. We're asking to be 63, so we're asking to be closer to the street. As with anything on a heavily traveled street with no other active frontage on this side, we think that we're striking a balance between bringing people close to that street and giving them ways to access north and south and across, but still, as you alluded to, buffer them from the traffic. With this space here, I'm trying to look for a scale, but from the property line to the front of the building is about 63 feet. So you're quite far back for any of the pedestrian uses here, but you're then about 30 feet from the walkway. So people that move through this walkway can take advantage of seeing the folks out on their decks and grilling, enjoying the summertime. They get to see at this location right here, they're very close to the fitness opportunity. So people working out, you're bringing that vitality out into the space. And I think the intention with this building is, it's not a mixed-use building. It's the market is calling, in this instance, for a residential building, and that's what we're providing. We're trying to accommodate some of those uses in a residential sense. I'm seeing a lot of mixed-use buildings that are going without and having a large struggle filling those first-floor spaces right now. But the main reason is that this is a residential building, and we're trying to get residential uses that are active and bring them out. Of course, we wouldn't want a football field or anything like that out here, so we're trying to strike a balance. And I hope that answers your question or moves towards it, but that's what our
I think
goal
the other
was.
thing I want to, there's another frontage here, and you talked about that frontage, and particularly as you move west past your project, that it would be landscaping, creating the active frontage along the street. And can you talk a little more about what that really means? I'm curious how landscaping, regardless of what angle you place the plantings at, how that actually creates an active pedestrian environment unless there are people actually out there.
Yes, I think that's a great point, and I would want to clarify that. I think that the way you're designing the landscape, what we're proposing with the layers that you're moving through, we're creating this set of kind of layers that you move through as you walk through the space. As your angles are moving in this direction as you're crossing them, and that's a visual excitement to the eye. So in an active sense, that's my reference. And as the pedestrians more and more, again, as we've indicated, the goal of this is to be the kind of the catalyst. And hopefully in the future, more corners will develop, things across the street will develop, and there'll be more and more people traversing this coming up from the south, from Centennial Lakes and the Galleria, and maybe moving off to visit people at this location or continue on to Cub. And so that space will get more and more pedestrian traffic, and hopefully that will activate the space. It would certainly be more active than it is at present because there's no sidewalk there and it's just trees. So I think it's an iterative process, and as things move forward, it will eventually get more and more, and I think this is our opportunity to provide you with that first step towards that.
Commissioner Schroeder, if I may add, the main focal piece of this whole project, it all starts with where the entrance is. And we've set that entrance actually facing out to York and to 69th, and I just want to make sure that's not overlooked. That's where all the energy starts, is at the entrance where we've created a drop-off area, the main entrance to the building. We have our fitness facing out to York Avenue that can be used 24/7. Within the front door, we have a computer cafe that looks back out onto the plaza. The plaza we see as being inhabited with people. We have benches and places to sit all along this. We cut through with the berms and create benches at the corner here that, again, create a pedestrian scale to the development, and yet it allows people who are wandering about, they could cut through to the main plaza, again, the main lobby, the computer cafe, the main concierge reception area. All of that is part of that front door, which is, we think, activating the main streets, which is York and 69th, and we think that is very important. Like David mentioned, the dwelling units on that floor, they have their walkout patios, so there are doors that occur. It is not a mixed-use development, but we, on both York and along 69th, all of those dwellings have patios and walkouts as a part of that area. So it's not just landscaping, it is the people that are living there that create the activation. So.
And I appreciate what you're saying about the front entry, but that part, just kind of guessing from the scale here, doesn't need the setback variance. The most active part of your building actually doesn't require the setback relief that we'd be granting you if we look at this favorably. It's the part that doesn't have the most active part that we would be granting the variance for. And there's a contradiction in there.
Commissioner Platter?
Yeah, I had a couple questions, comments. So I would definitely agree with Commissioner Staunton. I look at this and I think you just plopped an island in here in a way. And the connections, you do a lot of internal pedestrian pieces, but I'm having a tough time looking how you're connecting everything else here. In particular, there's no way to the transit stop to the north. That's at least not shown on here, how they get through there. I really think you need a path to the mall, and you can say what you will about, well, if you have a path and people, but people right now are going to walk right across those parking lots. So you're going to have the same situation, even worse, because you've not acknowledged that and you've not put something in there for a decent straight-through path. I agree. Geometry is a key trait here. And so I really believe that, and I think you really need to take a much harder look at that, because you want to integrate this with the rest of the site and not just create an island where there's a lot of internal circulation, but you can't really get anywhere. I don't want this to become a place where people drive to the mall from this apartment, drive over to Barnes & Noble from this apartment, drive to Target. I don't want that to happen here. And I'm afraid what you're setting up could cause that if you don't have direct, clean paths for pedestrians in particular. The other place that we talked about before, which I don't see any improvement on, is crossing West 69th Street. People are going to want to go across to the Starbucks, to the Barnes & Noble, all Galleria, right across the street. Again, I don't want to see people driving to get to Galleria. And that's, I think, what you're partially setting up here. You're not providing an easy path across 69th Street with any flashing lights, any kind of enhanced pedestrian crossing in that area. And I think you really need to do that. So again, my lot of, other things too. I think it's a great project overall, but I think we're really missing a big piece if we're not addressing all these integrations that we're looking for, not just thinking about what the internal space is, but how it gets out to everything around here. One kind of
Could I just ask you to clarify
Sure.
for me the 69th crossing? Are you? I'll move this up a little bit. Are you indicating something in this area?
Well, where it's at right now.
Because we have the crosswalk here, which is right out the front door.
Right, but if you go down right there,
Okay.
that definitely needs some enhancement.
And I believe this, due to that traffic study, may have gone away, and we were proposing to move that down to the existing crosswalk that's on the promenade.
Again, I think when you start doing all those situations, you really start to force people to do things they want to do. People are still going to try to cross there because it's the straightest shot. And I think we just need to acknowledge that where the easiest way to get somewhere is a straight line, and we need to acknowledge that people are going to do that and make enhancements to go along with that.
Thank you.
And I would also agree that with the left turn lane down the block at the movie theater, I too wonder why that's not there. But also when you're doing all this, to take some pressure off of this intersection and again get back to enhancing the pedestrian paths around here, anything we can take, to take traffic off this street a little bit will help out with getting people able to walk around this area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
I have a few items, but just as a follow-up to Commissioner Platter, I agree mostly with what's been said about the connection to the mall. I think it would be worth looking at that pretty closely, the direct connection. But I would also not like to see those trees lost. I mean, when you look at an aerial photo of the whole mall property, it's really nice, the green strips. You don't want to lose those in the for the purpose of pedestrian movement. So I think it was the staff diagram where they suggested maybe is there a way to make the thing a little wider. I understand the concern about having pedestrians right on the edge where the cars are moving, but at that point the cars are moving at a sort of a parking lot pace, we hope. I would just look at that. I do disagree a little bit with Commissioner Platter's comment on crossing 69th. And I know people want to go the straightest line. But in this case, I think you made a good point in that the primary entrance, and I would assume where most people will be moving out of if they were to say to walk over to Galleria or whatever, should probably be out the main entrance and across the street at a controlled crossing. And I would just worry that we're setting up a lot of different crossing points that would ultimately be more dangerous. And I mean, I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just kind of looking at that. Given that you have the one down the way, which lines up with the promenade, the one on the corner, which would in theory be a pretty direct route across. So I wouldn't feel same as Commissioner Platter on that. I would like to just ask a couple very sort of detailed questions. One is how the circulation works in the parking below. And could you maybe on it's sheet P1, it's P1 and 2, but whatever diagram you have, can you show how, I'm looking at the ramp, so it's 2 levels of parking, and you're coming in, if I'm seeing it right, you're coming in pretty much at grade, correct? You're not
Correct.
going down, so you're coming straight in, doors open, and then you're essentially going down one level?
Actually, if you look at the plan on the left-hand side, there's 2 access points into the ramp. One is on the west side, the other is on the north. We're a couple of feet down from the main floor, first floor elevation, and we are ramping down outside, and then 25 feet within the building as well to get into that lower level garage. So we are ramping down partially on the outside, partially inside to get to the first below grade level, and you can loop around that donut shape for the parking. And then to get to the lower level, you continue on, and there's a secondary ramp to get you down to the next level here. And
So when you say secondary, that's the only way I can get down to the next level, is it not?
Correct.
So right where your finger is.
Yes.
You're fully confident that I just trying to guess at the dimensions and everything that those movements can occur there in a safe manner.
Yes.
Cars are going to be coming up there.
Yes.
As well, and cars going down. And
it's designed to accommodate two-way traffic on these turning radiuses. That turning radius is no different than turning the corner, for instance, here. And so the speeds have to occur at a safe speed, but it's within a ramp. People tend to drive slower anyways to navigate, and so they can make those turns.
It's just a little bit of a blind corner. It's not that it can't be resolved.
Sure, we can absolutely take that into account, and we'd be able to open up the wall here. We don't need a wall here. We can do things with lighting and the widths of the ramp here to make it very safe.
Okay, and then the other question relates to trash and recycling. Only because I have to take that one from Commissioner Schroeder. It's normally his deal. But so you might as well start right here in the parking level.
Sure.
Can you kind of walk backwards? What's the process? I just had pizza and I'm going to go get rid of that box or whatever.
Sure.
How does it get from there to away from the building?
Sure. On the upper levels of the plan, at any level, you can get to this corner location here, or the opposite on the other side here, where you access trash chutes. Those trash chutes, you can dump your recycling in one chute, trash in the other. So we're accommodating both at both locations. Those drop down into the first level trash rooms at these locations. And then on the given trash day, those would be wheeled out by the maintenance staff out to the west side here, out to the site, and so on trash day they'd be wheeled out on the site half hour before trash pickup occurs, and there's a trash pad here, and as soon as those are done, then maintenance staff will take that back in. From this location, the trash will be wheeled out over here as well, and so it'll be picked up in one location. Move-ins and loading, site plan here, first floor plan here. This will work just fine. Move-ins occur off of the main drive around on the west side here, and as you pull around, you can either pull in or back in to a pull-off area that's off of the drive, and you can park there, and then you would enter in to the project into the freight elevators here that will get you to any level there. We also have an area up on this side as well where you can move right into the building here into this freight elevator to get you to either side of the building. So it's equal distance to access any part of the building.
Funny how you anticipated my third question. You can see the pattern where I was going with it. Yeah. So thank you. I think that's it for now.
Other questions of the applicant? Mr. Motzenberger, I have one perhaps final question for the applicant. Southdale is the Southdale Mall is it's a very important thing for the city of Edina. And maybe you or your colleagues can address some of these. Over the past several years, we've seen a decline in activity at Southdale. I don't even remember the name of the place. It was where Herberger's was. Mervin's, yeah. Mervin's, some of the restaurants now behind the Cheesecake Factory are closed. What do you see, and what does Simon see? I mean, what's going on to rejuvenate, rehabilitate, rebuild that whole block? Because that is such an important area for the city of Edina. We don't want to see that. I mean, we've seen police reports where there's been problems in there, not recently, but in the not too distant.
You're very right, and we looked into that too before we went ahead. But I'm not with Simon. I can't respond, but there's a lady here that can.
Okay.
You want to talk about yours? Sure.
Thank you. My name is Lori Van Dalen. I'm the general manager of Southdale Center, 10 Southdale Center, Edina, Minnesota, 55435. I hear what you're saying. I've been with Simon for 14 years. I go around and I help renovate malls and bring them back to life. I've been with Southdale for 2 years now, and I hope that you all have been there in the last month or two because the transformation is just wonderful. We have 18 stores, new stores under construction right now. Our renovation is going to be done before Black Friday in November. Our new dining pavilion is going to be open. All of our new entrances are going to be done and open to the public before Black Friday. Our plan with Simon is we know we needed to do something with it. Southdale Center is one of 20 transformational properties in the company, meaning it means a great deal to our company. We know what it means to the community. Simon, Southdale, and the city of Edina have a very close working relationship. We've all come to the table, and I think we are seeing some of the fruits in our basket now with all of our hard work. And the addition of the apartments is just one step further on what we have to do to continue that process. It's not going to all be done in a nice, neat bow this year. We have 6 or 7 new stores that are going to be under construction next year, so this is going to be a process that continues. And just to briefly talk about crime, I met with the police chief, I think my second week at Southdale, and since then our crime is down over 30%. We have a great relationship with the police department, with our security staff, and it all works well together.
If I may add, I think part of the cure, part of invigorating the Southdale Center here is the fact that this project is a key piece of the puzzle here. It's not the whole solution, but it is a key piece in that we are adding permanent residents or residents who will stay there for at a minimum a year. But we're adding residents, we're adding eyes on the street that are there during daytime as well as evening hours that are there permanently. It's not just people that are commuting in and out, it's adding permanent residents near Southdale that will add to this place. They become customers of Southdale as well as living there and commuting and eating. So this project is a part of the puzzle of knitting this area back to to reinvigorate it or create greater growth for the area, and I think this is a good part of the solution.
Thank you. Commissioner Forrest.
Part of the reason for a CUP is that we can impose conditions if we see that there are some negative impacts on the welfare of the residents. A lot of the communication that we got from residents that was provided for us this evening, some of it mentioned their concern about noise, especially at the Galleria location, those residences over there. And I'm wondering if you have any understanding of how that would affect things as far as sound bouncing off of your building going back the other way. Will the berming, it will address things at a certain level, but I don't know what your materials, or the structure, if that can have any effect. What's your understanding of how the noise levels might be affected in the area?
I can talk a little bit. As far as a exact noise study, there's not been a noise study done, obviously. In an urban environment, building materials reflect. Part of the idea with those berms was at the level in which most of the sound is going to occur. And obviously, up higher, there's not going to be a lot of sound occurring. But where there are sounds and where there are people moving and traffic moving, by berming up and then adding on top of that plantings, evergreens, trees, and shrubs on top of those, you're creating a nice sound barrier for those that's going to muffle it. It's never going to eliminate it altogether. It's city and traffic, and that's going to be part of the environment. But I think with those elements in place, it will substantially help this, if it, as opposed to it not being present. But I'll let Mike add if he wants to.
Thanks. That's helpful and thought-provoking. The other concern I have is with the CUP approval, our ordinance says that this new development must provide direct sidewalk and trail connections to transit. So I was looking through the materials, and I can't locate now. I don't know if it was on any of the materials we had, an overview map that identifies the transit location and how it would interact with this property.
Regrettably, we didn't have, and we're happy to look at that. I mean, Commissioner Platter reminded us as well, a connection to the transit center, or at least an idea of how that might occur in the future as other pieces of the mall develop and can work into what we're providing. Right now, let me just kind of sneak this into the right spot, there is a transit station right up here across this intersection. And so what we did was, by enhancing this intersection, making it a lot safer with pedestrian, striping and connections from the building here, the front door for people to get to this transit center. There's also one directly across 69th in front of the Westin, I believe. If I'm incorrect there, I apologize, but I know there's this one. So transit is easily accessible for the residents at this location, and then eventually, over time, perhaps we can go back and explore how we might make those connections to the transit center.
Well, I guess that's what my concern is, that if there's a transit area that, if they're going to be taking a bus that isn't on the route where that stop, services, they're going to want to get over, to the main transit area, and that's what we should probably be looking at now if we're going to evaluate whether this meets the criteria.
Okay. I was just informed by my colleague that as part of the Southdale Transit Plan, they will be adding sidewalks along York that will connect. So we can get that plan and make sure that ours at this intersection connect in.
Good. Thank you. That's helpful.
Other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Fisher?
Could you bring that material board up here just for one quick second? And while you're doing that, I guess my question architecturally is the wood panel pieces. Can you explain, normally when you think of wood on the outside of a building, I mean, it looks beautiful, but what will this look like 10 years from now? Is this a panelized product? What do the panels look like?
It's a high pressure laminated material. It's not wood.
Right, so it's just
look like wood, but it's a laminated project for exterior conditions.
So if I say knock on wood, it's really not.
You're really not knocking on wood,
Okay.
right?
I mean, it's a great look, but I just want to make sure it's going to be a great look for some time.
It's made for exterior conditions,
Right.
In these climates as well, and it has been used in other areas around town.
I assumed that would be the case, but I just wanted to make sure. So thank you. Does anyone else want to see this? Should we pass it down?
Is that like a Trespa panel in? Is that what?
That's one of the product manufacturers. Okay. There are other manufacturers that produce similar product types.
Other comments from the questions for the applicant? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. And just to close, we gladly look at that pedestrian connection. We'll work with staff to look at how we address that. And if there's any questions after public comment, we're happy to come back up and answer.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we're in a public hearing. Other residents who wish to address this issue are welcome to do so. We ask that you come to one of the side podiums, give us your name and address, And under the rules, these are timed experiences. So, would anybody wish to address the commission concerning this project?
My name is Bill Lindberg, and I live in Unit 908 at the condos at the Westin. So we look north, and this week the Joni Mitchell song Big Yellow Taxi has been going through my mind. They paved Paradise and put up a parking lot. And so that's already been done. And I must say I'm reassured tonight by much of what I've heard. I did share Commissioner Schroeder's concern on the setback, which, as I was in the office today looking at this, the square footage in terms of current green space seemed to be about 50% of what it would be under the new plan, although it seems from the renderings and so on, some of that might be addressed. But I guess another concern I have, the traffic seems to be accounted for, but on the green space portion of this, it's one thing to do renderings, but when you have a adjacent street such as York, and presumably I'm only recently back to Minnesota now this year, but I don't know what the situation is with salt or other chemicals on the streets. But I know in many areas when you have vegetation close to a busily traveled street, and so I would just want to be sure there's some assurance and accounting for the long-term landscaping in reality. So those are my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Lindberg.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I'm Les Wanninger. I live at 3209 Galleria across the street at the Westin. I have two or three concerns, but since we got a time limit here, I'll take one first, which primarily deals with 69th Street and not the volume of traffic, but really the safety and the hazards that we have right now. If you look at the proposed exit from the property on the east. From the property right now, the entrance on 69th Street, that's an existing curb cut. There's no exit right now. And the reason there's no exit right now is because it keeps people from driving across, cutting across 2 lanes of traffic quickly, making a left turn to get into the Galleria and Baskin or Barnes & Noble and that kind of thing. I suggest that that's a potential traffic issue that needs to be looked at. I know that staff has looked at different kind of things, and the traffic study looked at some things there too. I just urge that be looked at, but I'd like to go further down 69th Street and think about if you look at coming out of the Galleria, going into Southdale or vice versa, you got straight shot across right there, and it isn't that there's so much volume of traffic, but there's not infrequent accidents that occur there. And there tend to be T-bone kind of accidents because the traffic tends to move at that point fairly quickly along 69th Street, but people are sort of, is it safe, is it safe, can I get across or not? I'd suggest that since there's going to be some restaurant down there, some more traffic, et cetera, that you not pass up an opportunity right now to look at traffic on 69th Street all the way between York and France. I mean, it's a good time to do it, whatever ought to be done. I'm not suggesting anything specific. I have some ideas. I would argue also not only for cars, but if you look at, and I drive the street obviously a lot, and I do stop when I see somebody trying to get across either on bike or pedestrian, but a lot of people don't at the light. Okay, but if I'm in these properties and I happen to be not up at York, but I happen to be sort of at the west end of the west end of the property, and I want to get across to Barnes & Noble. I mean, several of you made the point. Realistically, people do walk across right now, and they're taking almost literally their life in their hands. I think that ought to be addressed as part of this. And I think the same point about the geometry. Going to Southdale, you look at the Southdale parking lot right now. Any day you want to look out there, because I can see it out my window. You'll see people walking across, and they're walking to get in. And the entrance that was referred to next to the Cheesecake Factory, that's not really a main entrance into the property. That's really takes you downstairs and all that kind of stuff to wander through a long tunnel to get into the Southdale itself. So if you're really aiming for Southdale, most people would tend to go in over by the, what is it, Alta or whatever, what do you call that over there? That's the entrance people want to go to, and that's the closer to what Kerry Teague proposed, something like that. It seemed to me reasonable. People can think about reasonable ways to get there, but the walking all the way down to basically the promenade crossing and then all the way up to the Cheesecake Factory and then way back there, people aren't going to do that. They don't do it right now, so why would they do it when you have this new property? So that's the primary concerns, but getting out and causing cars, even enticing cars to sort of cut across quickly, cut across 2 lanes of traffic and get into a left turn lane to go across, that's not a good idea. And at the other end, we all know that that's not a good intersection right now. It ought to be looked at, and now's the time to do it. If I have
Go ahead.
The lights on, can I continue
Sure.
or not? Okay. The second is on the parking. Seems to me luxury parking, luxury apartments are going to have more than one, slightly 1.4, I think, cars per unit is what's proposed here. I'm not sure whether staff is included in that. I doubt it. So staff is going to have to park somewhere. I'm not sure where they're going to park. There will be some staff there. I would suggest to you that an awful lot of residents who are going to get luxury apartments are going to have more than 1.4 cars per unit. I guess that's really primarily a developer's issue. If you don't have enough parking, you can't sell the units, so maybe that's not a concern of this group here, but I think it could be paid attention to. So I guess the other issue I would talk about is just the density question. I was pleased to see here tonight that apparently the density is different from the drawings that I had before, which showed an average, almost all of the units basically being about somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 square feet, but I now gather that that's changed, so I would hold back any comments I have on that. So, again, safety from both the perspective of cars and people crossing the street. If you go down by the Galleria Southdale crossing that I mentioned before, you see people trying to walk across there all the time, and they're trying to do it when there's cars trying to cut across and make turns and all that kind of thing too. People are going to cut across on the shortest route. There's no doubt about that, and that's just a matter of whether you call it geometry, realism, or whatever. It does happen. So those are the things that I think it's a good opportunity to take advantage of that now and fix it.
Chair?
Commissioner Staunton.
Could I just ask Mr. Weiner a question, and I would have perhaps to the person who testified before as well. So you live in the West End.
That's right.
Where do you patronize the businesses on the other side of York? And I'm thinking of Walgreens or CVS or Cub or Edina's liquor store.
Walgreens and Cub, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you
Walgreens and CVS, not Cub. Okay.
Okay. How do you typically get there? I guess
in the winter, I would definitely drive. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Just cross the street because the sidewalks are not maintained quite to the level that you feel totally safe walking on a sidewalk that's right adjacent to the road. You could easily slip off, or you get sprayed with the salt and the ice and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hate to admit it, but I do.
But sometimes, in the summertime, will you walk to go to those places?
I've walked to those places, yeah.
Okay.
And if it were easier to get across the street, I know up at 70th Street, sometimes that button works and sometimes it doesn't to get across. So, yeah, if they worked, I would sometimes, of course.
And I asked
in good weather.
I asked not to put you on the spot, but I'm really wrestling with this whole kind of pedestrian environment along streets like York and France and 69th, where it's so car-centric and those roads are wide and the traffic is going quickly. And I look at this proposed development, and you're gonna put a whole bunch more residents, and there's grocery stores right across this. There's going to be people who are going to want to go across the street to use those businesses, whether it be Chipotle or Caribou or Cub or Walgreens or whatever else might sprout up. And so there's going to, I'm just raising it because I'm just not sure how to skin that cat.
Well, I can tell you that I do walk across to Target, and today I walked across past Target to get my hair cut at Rocco. Okay, that's the scary one too, getting across Hazelton. Okay? I mean, yeah, I suppose I could have walked back down to York and then all the way down there and up that way, or I could have walked all the way up to the promenade, but, you know, I'm lazy, and so I cut across just like everybody else does. The traffic circles have made it much, much safer for a pedestrian to get across 70th Street than it was before. Much. Okay, much. And I was on the Transportation Commission when we proposed those, and so I was in favor of them, but I think people have gotten used to them. And for pedestrian-wise, it is far safer than it had been before. So, okay.
Thank you for indulging my empirical research.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woniger.
Thank you.
No jaywalking across York, please.
I think the pedestrian crossing marks just got erased, that's all.
Okay. Other people wish to address the commission on this issue? Thank you very much for your participation. I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's bring the discussion up here to the commission.
Chair Grable.
Commissioner Fisher.
Before we delve into discussion, I'm just really curious. I think 3, maybe 4 times tonight there's been a reference to the restaurant or a restaurant coming in on some corner. Am I the only one in this room that is unaware of what are we referencing there?
Well, the picture that Carrie first showed indicated a restaurant on the southwest corner of the lot, or by
Maybe
the.
I just was looking at something else in that diagram. So that's what we're all referencing, a potential future restaurant on sort of an outlot. Is that what we're talking about?
As far as I know.
Okay. I was focusing on the little water treatment piece.
It was right near the water treatment piece.
All right.
Piece.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Okay. Other comments by the commission? Commissioner Forrest.
Procedurally, we only see this tonight, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What I'm kind of concerned about in a kind of theoretical manner, I guess, is the fact that the criteria that we're given to evaluate whether or not we should grant a CUP is, you know, it has to do with the impact on the residents and the people who use the area, and including how they interact with the landscape and the sidewalks and everything. And in our packet, it says that, you know, there's a couple of points for the conditions that would be imposed, proposed conditions anyway, is that prior to the issuance of the building permit, a final landscape plan must be submitted subject to staff approval, and that a final pedestrian connection plan must be submitted, again, subject to staff approval. And I think the staff will do a great job, but I'm just feeling like we're supposed to be using some of, you know, that information and see if it fits the criteria that we're given, that we're supposed to use to evaluate whether a CUP is appropriate, and yet we won't see it.
Commissioner Staunton.
On the CUP is basically whether we're going to approve residential use in this area, right, Carrie?
That's correct. Conditional use is required for the residential.
So, you know, my thought from the big picture, and maybe this doesn't get to Commissioner Forrest's detailed questions about the criteria, but, you know, as I think about this whole block of Southdale and the transition to the future, I think it's a good thing to add. I mean, this is a 232-unit proposal, which I assume means it'll be somewhat more than 232 people, probably, added to this area. I think it's going to drive certain market demands by those people who live there. There already are some in the Weston. We've heard from a couple of people who live there now. And I think that's going to be a good thing in terms of generating redevelopment in this area. So on the CUP, that's my 2 cents worth, is that residential makes sense in this area as part of a stimulus or catalyst to move us in a different direction.
Commissioner Potts.
I'll build on that comment. I'm supportive of this proposal. I think with the staff recommendations and with this notion of connecting to the transit facility, which seems like that'll work out, and staff will have a good chance to review it. And I just had a few sort of bullet point comments to back that up. I guess the general support of this. I think this proposal for increased density is a good one. I think this is definitely the right place for it. It brings 24-hour use to this site, having people living there. I think that that's a plus, certainly. I think the stormwater improvements that have been planned are a plus. And I think the design team has made a good attempt, has come up with good solutions for increasing the pedestrian accessibility dramatically along the street. I actually support the setback variance. I think that's better than it would be if it were set back further from York. And then additional things like the intersection across the Cub, I think, is also an improvement, and I am supportive of the design of the architecture as well. I think this is a nice proposal. And I guess finally, in terms of any questions about height, what solved it for me was this elevation drawing, which compared the new building not just to the west end, but also to the height of some of the pieces of Southdale across the lot.
Commissioner Scher.
I, too, am very generally supportive of the proposal. I do wonder, there was a question raised by one of the local residents, and I wonder if the developer would like to speak to it. It's something I've been thinking about. 1.4 cars per unit in luxury units, and the question of where is the staff going to be parking. Would anybody like to talk about how we arrived at that as being sufficient for this sort of a development?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. It's our experience. Typically, we use, even in new Class A apartments, typically 1-for-1 underground parking is common. We have gone to 1.2 in Bloomington. We've gone to 1.4 here, and these have been very adequate because and I think this will even be more so the case at this site. Many people don't have cars, and I think that will be more common in this location. People that don't have cars, so then we rent those other spaces to somebody that might be. That's an important point, and we stressed it, and I guess that's our experience is that it will be adequate. It's more than we've gotten any other, and we have some luxury, other luxury rental housing.
What are you thinking will be the average age of people in these units? Does that have something to do with your projection?
Well, part of it, we think the empty nester is people are likely residents, but we hope, and I think we'll also get a lot of younger professionals, be they couples or singles, it doesn't matter. So it's probably the two ends of the spectrum that we think we'll have, rather than.
And the staff, where would the staff be normally directed to park their vehicles?
The staff won't be taking up parking places if residents want them, I'll tell you that.
Right.
Maybe we'll lean on Lori if we have to. She'll charge us. Thank you. Excuse me. One other thing that, with regard to that, I forgot to mention is the nearby transit, which is, doesn't mean we all lean on the automobiles as much as we would in outlying locations.
We're talking five staff here today, to staff the building, maybe five people. Yeah.
Other comments? Mr. Waninger, you'll be interested to know that we will be having a meeting at our next meeting, Carrie, with an informal meeting with the Transportation Commission to discuss the roles that the Planning Commission and the Transportation Commission has. And this would be a good topic to bring up with them, Mr. Rickert as well. How do we manage the traffic along 69th Street and make sure that we are covering those bases as far as access to this, access to Southdale, access to the Galleria in a prudent and efficient manner. So thank you for your comments about that. Other comments, Commissioner Plattiter?
I guess I have a question for the rest of the commission, and we've talked about this a little bit, but kind of these other pedestrian accessibility we've talked about tonight. I mean, I like this project. Don't get me wrong, but I think if we don't address some of this now, I think we're missing an opportunity to start. It may not happen tomorrow, but we're missing the opportunity to address what we really want here, or at least what I want, and I'm hoping other people do, is the pedestrian connectivity around this whole area. And it's just been piecemeal, and we have to start somewhere for that. So my comment is what support amongst the commission for some of these other pedestrian areas that we've talked about as far as conditions upon this piece. So I'll leave it at that. And any more comments to those pieces? I could see us adding a condition to the conditional use permit that requires the axiomatic pedestrian access to the mall, and then perhaps a recommendation to the city council that they should ask for some specific recommendations or proposals concerning 69th Street. I'm not sure, and that was kind of my question to Mr. Reichert earlier. Who's responsible for that? Is this developer responsible to make sure that the city puts more crosswalks across 69th or York? I don't know who's responsible for that, but I think somebody needs to talk about it. Ms. Van Dalen.
I'm sorry, I'd like to address that. I've been working with Wayne Houle about the improvements on 69th, and he's brought to Simon a plan of what the city is proposing to do. And that includes the left turn lane, that includes additional crosswalks between the two properties. So as it stands right now, when I met with him 3 weeks ago, the plan is in the city's hands, and it's something that they're looking at doing. So I just wanted to verify that.
Thank you for that clarification. Other comments by the commission? Yeah. Commissioner Schroeder?
Well, I go back to the one thing. I like this project, and I think I'm encouraged to know that we're taking parking lots and turning them into some kind of higher use, especially when even though it hasn't been demonstrated in the parking study that the parking is actually used or not used. My suspicion is this is one of the least used parking lots at all of Southdale. But I go back to the setback variance, and I think I don't think it's this developer's responsibility in whole, and I think they tried to demonstrate how they're meeting the requirements that we have laid out in our ordinance for accommodating setback relief by creating an active pedestrian environment. We don't define that very well. They've landed their entire argument on landscaping and berming, which I don't think creates an active pedestrian environment. If we did, we wouldn't have anything like what we have behind Target. We would have been satisfied with just a sidewalk, a bike path, some berming, and some landscaping, and that's not what the promenade is. I think that there's a whole lot more that could be added to the pedestrian realm to activate it when we have buildings that are set back, and particularly when we try to organize them in spaces that would otherwise have parking lots. And our documentation tonight actually suggests that those large setbacks actually encourage parking in front of buildings, which our comprehensive plan is trying to stay away from in these kind of areas. So while I'm supportive of the project, I do want us to go back and maybe add this to our list of things to study, to look at what it actually means to create an active pedestrian environment. I don't think this creates an active pedestrian environment, but I still like the project.
I'm going to, if I might, respond to that, at least from my point of view. I think the fact that this is not a mixed-use development is relevant to that question. But I was at Cub the other day, and I knew this was coming up, so it was on my mind. And as I pulled out of Cub and went south on York, I was struck by the green space along York between the entrance to Cub and 69th Street. And the idea that you would create a walkway through this green space coming down York and also going across on 69th, it seemed to me that it would make a nice place for people to walk and that they would want to walk there. And so that's how I see this as being actively enticing to pedestrian use, not necessarily connecting to a building on the one side of the walkway, but nevertheless being an attractive an amenity for pedestrians along that street.
I don't disagree. It's just that we're being asked to give setback relief based on only that. We can debate this another time, and I think we're probably in the same position on this project. But I'm just suggesting that the condition that exists out there, this kind of verdant green space along the street, doesn't have a building next to it. We're changing that by putting a 10-story building next to it or a 6-story building next to it.
Other comments by the Commission? Commissioner Fisher.
I would say, if I look at, all of this sort of highly visible commercial type sites in the city, I would rank this particular corner in the top 3 to 5 of the ones that I've always been most bothered by in terms of it's just kind of ugly because it's a lost parking that no one parks in. And I do pay attention. I don't think I've ever seen anyone park there. I've seen a lot of snow piles, which I'm assuming there's going to be a different solution for.
They store Cadillacs there from time to time, too.
I could tell you my story about when I had to find my parking pass in that little area, but that's another story. So this is really, when we talk about breaking up the super block, and we all imagine different ways to do that, I think this is a really nice start. I think it's going to be really complementary use on this corner. And while I agree with Commissioner Schroeder about, so, I like the project, and I do think it's another conversation about this active building frontage. It is a little bit of a different animal because it's not mixed use. I almost think it's more equates to when we talked about the YMCA, which wasn't really pulled up to the street, it was back, but we were really intent on getting that active space to be facing the street. And we talked a lot about in the middle of the winter at 6 o'clock at night when it's just kind of dark, but yet you're still walking, you're trying to move up and down these streets. What we're talking about active is sometimes what's happening inside and where's the light coming from. And I look at this and I was thinking a lot about it as you're explaining. Now, the berms on the one hand might make it seem like you're out and alone as you're walking along that sidewalk. But I think if you were to sort of show on the elevation, it might be worth talking with when you get to the council about this, illustrate in some way where is the activity and light emanating from. Because it's not going to be doors like we would look at if this were a retail use, but it really is important that there's a visual connection. When you're walking down that sidewalk at 6 o'clock at night in the winter, you want to know there are other human beings in this area. Otherwise, it's not going to be comfortable coming from that transit stop past here. I think you're kind of there, especially at the corner. I think the corner is strong. I'm trying to picture how wide, that opening and making sure it feels like there's that connection. So I kind of look at this a little bit differently, and I think the value of that green is going to be really important given the context of this enormous field of parking, behind it. So I'm in favor of the project.
Mr. Chair, can I add one more thing on about this? Because I need to go back to our ordinance. Our ordinance says that the use creates an active pedestrian environment, not the landscaping, not the sidewalk, but the use. And when we've been dealing with other projects, it's been about how we get commercial storefronts to open out on the street. And we actually talked in the past about having active operable doors. This is not what we've been talking about, what we've been hearing about in favoring the setback relief is landscaping and berming, creating an active pedestrian environment. That's not what our ordinance says we can do.
Commissioner Forrest?
I think this is really an interesting discussion. In spite of what I perceived as kind of a procedural nit, it is interesting to see that a lot of the things that we're concerned about, the proponent has been considering, whether it's the pedestrian connectivity or the parking, all of those things. It seems to be, at least, they've given it a lot of thought. I think of the streetscape as, for mixed use, it doesn't all have to be in one building. The area can be mixed use when there's a variety of things, and we certainly have other things going on very nearby. And eventually, as things evolve, I would hope that each owner, user of the properties would contribute in their own way. I do think right now what they have in front of us, like the sidewalk experience, is much improved over what's there now. And I like the variations, I like the boardwalk, all of those things are really kind of an exciting change that you usually don't get alongside, a four-lane retail-oriented road that's been there for a while. So I think that's a positive. So I think they're contributing both to the pedestrian thing and the mixed-use experience of the area. And I think it's an interesting and a positive thing going forward.
Other comments? Are you ready for a motion? Oh, nope.
My question is, with the staff put before us, we have two things. We have the variance approval, and then we have the CUP. And with the CUP, the staff suggested that we consider requiring that other walkway, and so that I just wanted to put that out there so we don't forget about it.
Right, thank you. So, are you ready for a motion? There are three actions requested. First, site plan with a front yard setback variance and the parking stall variance. Secondly, the conditional use permit to allow residential use. And the third is the replat. Is that right, Carrie? And let me ask you a question, Planner Teague. If we were to put a condition to require that additional pedestrian access, which of those three actions would it most likely attach to?
Yeah, I might suggest you could even add them to both. You might note that some of the conditions are the same, both in the site plan with variance and conditional use permit.
Right. Thank you.
So you could add it to both, I would suggest.
What's your pleasure?
So are we taking the conditional use permit first?
We can.
I'm just having a hard time finding the correct order here.
On page, the recommendations are starting on page 15 of the staff report. Actually, the first one is the site plan with the front yard and parking stall variances.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I missed that one. I can attempt to make a motion here, if that's all right.
Please.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we recommend that the City Council approve the site plan with front yard setback variance from 115 feet to 63 feet and parking stall variance from 6,747 spaces to 6,442 spaces, subject to the staff findings and the conditions listed by staff. I won't read through all of those, if that's all right. And then we'll add the one more condition, which is the direct pedestrian route to the mall via roughly a 45-degree angle from this site directly to the mall.
There's a
Noting
motion.
the fact that we would prefer we not lose the trees in that area. My editorial comment.
Pardon me? Sure.
I would just ask, is it possible to add on to your motion and maybe it's treated somewhere else, but the pedestrian access to the transit stop as well, or is that is that being addressed in another piece here?
I'm open, well, I don't know how we finish this motion thing, but I think what I heard is that it's being addressed, so I'm not sure. It's just difficult because that's getting a little bit further on the other side of the mall property, and I'm not sure if we can put that on this. I mean, we could. I just don't know if it's. I guess, all we're saying, we all talked about assuring that there's a direct connection. So I think it's fine to have it in there.
So you're adding that, the other condition of it,
So not only
the project is sure that it has pedestrian access to the transit facility.
Correct.
So the motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion with the addition.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the site plan with the setback and parking stall variances with additional conditions that the axiomatic shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line pedestrian connection with trees and access to transit facilities. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is the CUP.
This is the site plan
This is the site plan.
and the variances.
Mr. Chair, I have a question of staff on condition number 4. The property owner is responsible for replacing any required landscaping that dies. We approve this with the landscape plan that's in front of us tonight, even though the final landscape plan is subject to staff approval. That becomes the required landscaping. It's not a quantity, it's actually what's defined in that plan.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next issue is the conditional use permit to allow residential use.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of the conditional use permit to allow residential use on the site per the findings and the conditions outlined in the staff report on pages 18 and 19. Yes, 18 and 19.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to grant the conditional use permit to allow residential use based on the staff findings and conditions. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Platter?
Do you recommend we add the previous 2 conditions to this motion as well?
I would.
I think
I
Carrie was
would. I
recommending
believe
that.
they probably have more strength in the conditional use.
It's fine with me then.
I concur.
So the motion as amended is, as earlier stated, plus the conditions that applied to the first action. Commissioner Forrest?
I believe there was also a staff recommendation to require the changes on 69th Street with the left turn lanes issue. Is that in the recommendations?
That's in
That is.
that's in the conditions.
Okay, so
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. And then the final action, upon the recommend to the City Council approve the proposed replat. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the final replat.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the replat motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda, sketch plan, Frownshoe Inc., 7700 France Avenue, Edina, Minnesota. Speaking of restaurants.
I thought, man, they're having a lot of impact all the way up at Southdale. Crazy. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Commission, this property is located 7700 France. It's the last property on the Edina-Bloomington border on France, on the west side. The property is 17 acres in size. It's currently zoned POD2 Office District. There is, I believe it's a 6-story, a little over 300,000 square foot office building, a large parking field to the west. If you drive by here, you might notice this is parking of a lot of Toyotas. It's leased space from a local dealer, so the site is quite a bit overparked. This is an aerial shot. You can see the cars parked on that far west side. What the applicant would like consideration of is to construct a restaurant here in the northeast corner along France. A quick look at the site plan, the existing building. This would be the restaurant up here. In terms of setbacks and amount of parking spaces, this would be all code compliant. Another just quick look, a potential patio to the south. A couple of illustrations of what the building might look like. The primary issue here is that a freestanding restaurant is not a permitted use in the POD2 zoning district. We do allow them on the inside of office buildings. They're primarily, the idea behind that is they would serve people within the office. So it's currently not a permitted use. So a couple of ways, if the commission believes this is an acceptable use on the property. A couple of things to consider. We could rezone the site to a site that would allow restaurants. PUD zoning would be a possibility here. There is some potential redevelopment on the site with that large parking lot to the west. PUD could be structured to allow this kind of use and then still utilize the POD2 zoning for the rest of the site. And then if they would want to do something in the future, it would be an amendment to the PUD. Another option would be to allow a restaurant in a POD2 zoning district as a permitted use, a freestanding restaurant. So what I included in your packet is all the POD2 sites within the city. And I'll just quickly go through those. There is a POD2 site located on 169 here on the west and 494. This small site here is the Helmuth and Johnson building that was recently constructed. And I believe the property here is owned by the applicant or the applicant this evening. There's a medical office building on that site. So that would be a site where a freestanding restaurant would be allowed if we were to change the code. Then along Highway 100, we have some existing office buildings on the west side where POD, or if we were to allow a restaurant, these would be sites where a freestanding restaurant could also go. And then along France, here's the subject property that we're looking at. There's another office building to the north. And then straight west of Southdale, this entire site is also zoned POD2. So those are the sites that would be impacted. So this is a sketch plan review, nothing binding, but just simply to discuss the project and provide some feedback.
Carrie, how does Tavern on France, how did it get there? It looks like it's in this district, and that's a freestanding restaurant.
It is in the POD2 district. That one is attached to the office building, and I'm not sure if any of the commission was involved, but when that was turned to a restaurant, there was a variance granted to that standard. Oh. I had some discussion with the city attorney about, is that something we could do here? And he really felt that was a use variance because this is a freestanding structure. So he differentiated it between that. So his recommendation is that we need to adjust the code in order, if we want to see this happen.
Chair Grable, can I ask?
Commissioner Fisher.
Carrie, as you've talked to the city attorney or anybody else around City Hall, do we know why it was important at one time to not allow freestanding restaurants in this condition? I mean, to sort of It's like, okay, you're okay as long as you're in a building where you're sure to fail because no one can see you. I just don't know what the rationale would have been at that time.
Yeah, I don't know.
You probably didn't want McDonald's or Burger King or something.
There's always one of those reasons, like there's some other kind of...
Didn't want the row of McDonald's and Arby's and all that.
Okay. That makes sense.
That's what I would think.
That's a very good guess, actually.
That's why I'd be a little concerned about changing the POD to whole scale with that.
Commissioner Staunton.
So is the Fuddruckers in a different zone?
It's in a different city.
Yeah, that's actually in Bloomington.
When did we give that away? Well, when I worked in that office building, it was Edina. Outrageous. That's another topic for conversation.
Other questions of staff? Okay. Would the applicant care to come forward and tell us about your restaurant?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is David Anderson. I'm Senior Vice President with Frau & Schuh, 7101 West 78th Street in Bloomington. Commissioners, thank you. I think Mr. Teague outlined very well simply what we're considering for the site and to do some planning for the longer term. But this plan is in response to some market interest that we have had for the site. We want to give some thought to how the site presents itself for the opportunity for this kind of development. So some of the things you were talking about earlier in the evening, this gives us an opportunity to bring a building to the street, to activate a bit of a relationship between the avenue and some of the architecture and the design of this site. So it's a small building, as we've shown, 7,500 square feet approximately. And this is a very large property. Of course, 17 acres, and with the portion of the site on the west that you've seen on the aerial, longer term, there may be some other development potential. The office market today isn't what we expect it to be, perhaps in a few years down the road. But the concept of approaching this as a PUD, from our perspective, would make a lot of sense if that would allow us some flexibility for future planning. We want to be responsive to how the office market will evolve, and that could include some additional office development on the western portion of the site or integrated into the current office environment. But today we think that this stands alone fairly well. And Eric Reiners with Spreedy's Reiners Architects is here tonight to talk a little bit about some of the design considerations or layouts, or certainly answer any questions. So that's really where we can leave it, unless you have any other questions. And thank you.
There will be questions, I'm sure.
Good evening, Commissioner and Chair. Thank you again for taking the time to review our sketch plan. As David alluded to, we've been working with them.
Could you give me your name again, please?
I'm sorry. Eric Reiners.
Reiners.
Okay. Spreedy's Reiners Architects, 4200 West Old Shakopee Road in Bloomington. We've been working with Frau & Schuh companies on a sketch basis only as we assess the opportunities for further development on the 17 acres there at 7700 France. And we haven't been working with any particular restaurateur to date. And there's undoubtedly going to be some very specific brand requirements imparted by a restaurateur eventually when one is identified and partnered with. So our only directives to date have been to emphasize the prime location for a potential structure and its image as it engages France Avenue. So the sketch is just that. It's only a sketch. But we wanted to develop something that was going to bring some energy out toward the avenue. So you'll see in the diagram that we've arranged the dining spaces on the east side of the structure toward France and bounded it with exterior patios so that those spaces could be utilized outside between France and the structure, and there would be a high level of activity visible from France even during the winter seasons when everybody would be inside. The only other requirement or request of the ownership group was that we integrate a little bit of the materiality or color and texture of the existing structure, although it doesn't impart a lot, to the new facility, and also introduce some new elegant and high quality materials. And again, that's going to be really ultimately governed by the restaurateur that they partner with. But we tried to consider this site together with the existing structure and any potential future development that might happen on the west side of that structure. So with that, I'll throw it back to you and see if you have any questions.
One question I have, if you look up and down France, you've got Fuddruckers, you got the Macaroni Grill, Tavern on France, you got New Pittsburgh Blue in the Galleria, and if I was going to rate those restaurants in terms of quality, I would start with Fuddruckers and end up at Pittsburgh Blue. And I'm wondering, what's your concept about where this restaurant will fall within that range?
Well, my understanding from Frauenschuh, and I'm sure Mr. Anderson could address that, they've been speaking with only the highest level of service restaurants available, and that's the kind of clientele they want to bring to the site.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Carpenter. I like Fuddruckers, by the way. I do.
I thought you had it at the top.
Yeah, I didn't know which way you were going. Hey.
From top to bottom.
Just the fact that it's not Edina.
They do take a hit for that.
I may not have caught this exactly. I just want to clarify. Were you saying that you're looking at or working on eventually the overall development of the entire parcel, or did I misunderstand?
Currently, we've concentrated most of our efforts on just looking at what and how this restaurant could be sited on the property, knowing that there's future potential for other parts of the property, especially that west end. So that's why we're concentrating just as far east as we can get on the property and siting this particular structure as best we can on that property end.
Are you losing an opportunity from a development or planning perspective if you're parceling them out? Excuse the phrase, but if you're chunking them away like that, as opposed to stepping back and looking at the broader picture? I'm just kind of wondering.
You want to take that one?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, what I was referencing is we're dealing with a couple of different dynamics in the marketplace. One, with this site and it being a pad, it sets up very logically to be a restaurant. So with that concept and the interest we've had in the marketplace, which we've alluded to, we're being responsive to upscale establishments and considering that level of restaurant use on that northeast pad. Right now, we're in an office market that is very slow and not active. Now that's turning around, and eventually we think it will come back. So we're not speculative in our view of things, or won't speculate how that west side might want to develop. That's what we were referencing. But I was mentioning in the context of a PUD approach to this, that it would give us some flexibility. If we did this under a PUD approval, we could perhaps come back later and amend that PUD for some additional elements, whether that be office or expansion of the site in some other way. So that was, perhaps we stepped a little bit ahead in the future relative to the property, but this is more related to immediate development potential.
But we'd be only looking at, right now then, under that scenario, a PUD specifically for this particular site.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Questions, reactions? Commissioner Forrest.
I like that idea in that when the property is further developed, they would be coming back to the city, and the city could have some control and say and negotiate with them over what the city wants to see as well. And I really like the fact that you're focusing on the interactive aspects of the property with the public realm, and also I like the idea that it will kind of break up that wall of office buildings down there.
Commissioner Platter?
That's one quick question, just to orientate myself. The existing, I guess, out parcel office building, that's the Fidelity building, right? Is that, who's in that place?
That's correct. On the
Okay.
southeast corner, that is Fidelity Investments.
Okay. And the other thing, it's more of a comment on this about the PUD versus the adding this to the current zoning district. I think the PUD is probably the best way to go. I'd be a little worried if we change the zoning for the other areas and what that might bring up. I mean, that could open a can of worms potentially in other areas of the site or other areas of the city that we really don't want. All of a sudden, whatever shows up, that now it's in there, and then what do you do about that? So that's my 2 cents on which way to go.
Commissioner Fisher?
This is just sketch plan review, so we're just kind of giving our overview. I like the concept. I like the nature of it, sort of addressing the street. I think one of my favorite places along France Avenue is actually Tavern on France, mainly from the perspective of the activity that's outside, even in sort of the fringe weather because of the way they're doing the heaters and all that. It just feels good. It feels good to drive by it, walk by it, whatever. And I think having that opportunity down here would be great. So I don't have any problems. In terms of the vehicle of making it happen here, I think for the reasons Commissioner Platter just mentioned, PUD is probably the way to go. And then amending that as, in the future gives us the ultimate ability to have that conversation and make the right things happen on the site. So I think it's a good idea. It fits our theme tonight of doing cool things with really, big parking lots.
Commissioner Staunton, I'll let you follow on that one.
Well, and so following up on themes, you poor guys have to sit through this intramural bantering. I would note that, just across the street and up one block is the Starbucks that we just talked about, and how we were having a hard time imagining that it might engage the street front, and here we go, right across the street, we got somebody, so maybe it will be happening.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Well, building on what happened at Starbucks, we made a big point about pedestrian connectivity along France Avenue and connecting to the building. And we don't actually see that in the storefront here. I know the city's going through an effort right now to try and enhance pedestrian connectivity along France Avenue and provide crossings of France Avenue that encourage movement from one side to the other. I think when I look at the site plan, the thing that's missing is the connection to France Avenue that's other than just visual, the actual physical connection. I don't know how we'd actually go through the process of creating a sidewalk here, because it would be kind of a sidewalk that starts and ends nowhere. But the city, I think, will eventually look at having sidewalks continuously along France Avenue. And as we consider site plans here, we should be thinking about how a building would connect to that. I'm actually pleased with just if you take that part away, just how this building is orienting itself both to the site and as opposed to the last proposal we saw, where it took the most active pedestrian space they had on the site and they lodged it right at the base of a 6 or 10-story building on the north side of a 6 or 10-story building. This is actually orienting itself to the best part of the site, best orientation to sun, to weather. So I think you've got a great sketch plan here.
Other comments?
Just
Commissioner
to
Forrest.
add on to Commissioner Schroeder's comment too, is as this comes forward, we can also be looking at how it connects to the other buildings on the property and nearby properties and transit as well. So, there's different layers of all of that.
Commissioner Platter?
Just one thing, I was looking kind of I know how you nicely shaded the parking on site here. What happens in reality? Are you going to do something where, like all the office and guest parking in the green, or I know where you show the nice dedicated restaurant in the brown, but there's probably a good chance those are intermingle. Do you have any concerns about that, or do you have any thoughts on how you would address that a little bit? Are you trying to pull them together? I guess are you trying to separate them?
There is some limited concern about how parking is going to be handled. There's a number of positives, though. The hours of primary height or
for the most part,
heaviest use for the restaurant are not going to necessarily overlap directly with daytime office parking. There will be some overlap near the 5 o'clock hour, but this structure at 7700 has all secured entrances except the main front entrance that faces France Avenue. So even the north door is locked and has limited access to employees only. So in that regard, you won't have a lot of visitor parking or transient parking on that north parking lot other than for the restaurant.
It's kind of like the way Macaroni Grill works across the street. I mean, during the day that's all office, but then the restaurant gets it at night. So, Commissioner Staunton?
So you're saying that the entrance to the restaurant you're envisioning being on France?
No, the entrance.
The office building. Okay. So the entrance to the restaurant I'm assuming is off of the parking lot.
It's going to be on the southwest corner of the building of the restaurant.
Okay.
The corner closest to the main office building.
Okay.
Other comments or suggestions by the commission? I think the consensus is that this looks like a pretty neat deal. And it's worth pursuing. This idea of the PUD as opposed to a rezone of the office district seems to make a lot of sense.
And commission would be supportive of rezoning to a PUD?
We don't have a proposal in front of us, so. But
for the right
proposal, yeah. And I think the consensus, at least what I've heard here, is that if we had to make a change in the zoning to accommodate a project like this, it would be better to do it under a PUD than it would be to rezone that whole district to allow a restaurant. So, Mr. Platter?
Were you planning to take this to council then? Or what was your next step?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think this feedback is helpful tonight, number one. That's what we came here tonight to get some feedback on the direction we're taking this and understand procedurally how this could be processed. I think what we'll do now is we'll step back into the marketplace with prospective users because, the detail now that we would apply to this to take it through the formal submittal is what's next. So I don't, we'll speak with the planner whether we need to. I don't think we're going to council next. What we're going to do is we're going to go back and determine what our formal submittal may ultimately look like, and that would be, timing to be determined.
I'd suggest you have some communication with Planner Tig about that next step.
Okay.
It may be advantageous to take a sketch plan to the council. It's not.
Yeah,
still a sketch plan, but
yeah, sketch plan. Just discuss that with Planner Tig.
Be happy to do that. Thank you.
That was a suggestion.
Any other comments? Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, you received council connection, and you saw the attendance sheet, so you know where you stand on that. Chair and commission member comments. I don't have any comments. Do any members of the commission have anything that they wish to say? Commissioner Staunton.
I just wanted to raise the question about the work plan and where we're at on that, because isn't there a meeting coming up on that topic? I know I had to leave the work session early. I don't know if that was discussed.
The work plan that we discussed at the meeting with the city council last week, there is a meeting with the council and all of the commissions to review everybody's work plan, and that's just the chairs. Is that next Tuesday? Next Wednesday? So that will be brought forward at that time.
So what's our work plan? Is there anything, I guess the question is whether there's anything we have to, in light of our work session last week, is there any discussion or any thoughts that we should be including before that meeting? And I don't get the sense that that meeting is like the door is shut after that. It's just to start the conversation.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so maybe we'll know more and can talk more after that meeting.
I think that session we had with the council was instructive on a couple things. They're not interested in PUD in a residential area, which is probably a good thing. They're interested in, what are we going to do with retaining walls, that type of thing. So,
is this intended to be primarily for work, like for the next year, essentially?
Essentially.
So the fact that I'm going off the planning commission, I should be promoting building this work plan up to be like a big stack of work for next year. As long as it's starting next year. Yeah. Let's get more ambitious, people. Come on.
Other commission member comments? Staff comments. Carrie, do you mind repeating what you mentioned to me earlier about Starbucks, since that item did come up in the discussion?
Yes, Starbucks initially asked for a delay before they went to City Council. They wanted to more formally draft up what those turn lanes were going to look like. And in their design work, they decided they would like to rotate the building so it's parallel with France. I believe one of your commissioners made that suggestion.
Did one of our commissioners make that suggestion?
Yes, I believe that was. And so rather than bring that forward to the City Council, we'll be bringing that back to the Planning Commission at your first meeting in October.
Good. He's too classy. He's too classy to say, "I told you so." Any other comments?
One additional, since we have everybody here this evening, if commissioners wouldn't mind hanging around for a quick picture for the website. I don't believe we've had everybody in attendance for a while, so maybe if that works out, you can think about it. You don't have to answer now. But
well, we've got everybody here. If somebody's got a camera real quick.
We do.
You can stand in back.
And Jordan also has a website plug.
Oh.
Good evening. Back in June, the city's Communications and Technology Services Department launched a new civic engagement website. It's speakupedina.org, which is also accessible through the city's website. On the right-hand column, there's a Speak Up tab that you can click on. It'll also take you to the website. But there we're taking any comments from any residents or anybody that lives or works or goes to school in Edina. any ideas they might have. There's also specific to the Planning Commission. There's a discussion forum on the website that's looking for ideas and feedback on potential redevelopments in Edina. So that could be something that you guys might want to check out and maybe chime in on.
Aren't we blessed? Anything else? All right, with the admonition that we're all going to stick around for a couple minutes to take a picture, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.